All right, Mr. Vikram, welcome to our
Mr. Adam.
This is our. So we had this idea a while back to kind of do we behind the scenes call it like the round table, but sort of just getting people sitting together talking about a subject that's interesting to us, but also interesting for an audience who may or may not watch. I don't know. Who knows?
It's for us anyway.
It's just so we can hang out, right?
Yeah.
But kind of a low key, unscripted. It doesn't matter if you mess up, kind of thing. Just getting some more information out there on topics that we care about.
Yeah,
so
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad you're here. We just kind of wanted to pick your brain about Seagree Estate.
It's a brain of mine.
Oh,
What
yeah.
can I say?
So big. Yeah, I mean, we can just dig right in if you want to.
Yeah.
All right, well. We can start 30,000 foot view. Like, how did you get involved with Seagree Estate?
Okay. Yeah, so part of my family produces coffee on Seagree Estate. They own and manage the estate. And I personally got involved in 2012. Was my first, or 2011, I think. And traditionally, as most producers do, they sell to importers, right? Importers will come through PNG. PNG is the farthest away coffee growing region from America, so you really don't get a lot of roasters coming through. It's like exceedingly rare. So sell to importers, and they sell on to the roasters. In Australia, where they kind of go back and forth to PNG from Australia, they started about probably 7 or 8 years ago distributing directly to roasters. When I got involved, I was still in school actually, and I was reaching out to American importers and basically selling container loads, as they typically do, to importers. But I knew that they were distributing directly in Australia, so concurrently I started going around to specialty roasters, talking to them, just like understanding the culture and the likes and dislikes and wants of roasters. And then I gave out some samples, some green samples of our top grade stuff, because what I was noticing was that American importers were typically taking like mid-level and lower level grades, and the Asian importers were taking the top level, like the P-berries and double A's, and sort of single origins. And when I was giving out top grade samples to roasters, they were really interested. They found it to be flavor profiles that they didn't typically associate with PNG or Indonesian coffees.
Right.
More preferred. They thought it was, tasty, and so we were getting a lot of good feedback. And I was personally interested in connecting directly with roasters. I was learning that they were interested in connecting directly with producers. And so that all led to, let's give this a shot. I'd like to give this a shot and see if we can, bring in our own containers and work directly with roasters. So that's how it started. That was the nugget of the idea. And we brought in our first coffees through Benchmark in 2015. And it's been struggle and strife and some triumph and a beautiful, hard, messy road. And now we've got, a good deal of relationships that have been ongoing year after year. Some of the nature of relationship coffee is that this isn't just selling a product, but this is truly a relationship.
For sure.
And so we have these loyalties. The coffee has improved, as you know, and in no small part because of you guys and other roasters that we work with, and the feedback that I've been able to take back. The coffee's improved year after year since 2015. When we brought in the first coffees, and I've instituted processing guidelines that are more rigorous based on what I've learned from roasters and from gaining my own sort of knowledge and seeing how other producers do things. So it's really developed into something bigger than we could have imagined and better than we could have imagined.
Yeah.
So it's
good
been
to hear.
beautiful.
Cool. I want to shoot from the hip here, so I got some questions that Matt airdropped to me. We sent people who sign up for our newsletter via our website. We shipped them out information that you were coming and wanted to get their input on some questions that they may have. So a couple of people emailed us, so I have a couple of those questions, some internal questions, and then some friends of ours, another coffee roaster here in town, Instagrammed us. But yeah, so I'll start getting into those. So I think we just kind of wanted to know either your personal mission with the Benchmark project or Benchmark's mission with the Seagree Estate project, kind of just holistically. You told us how you got involved. I guess it'd be interesting to know why you're staying involved or why you got involved.
It's a big question, but I've got several answers. One, I'll start with specialty coffee is a beautiful segment of the industry, full of beautiful people that are really trying to do a good thing through coffee. And so for me personally, and I've always had sort of a humanitarian background and since I was a kid, and so I saw a lot of opportunities in the specialty segment to be in coffee, grow better coffee, help them grow better coffee, connect with roasters and bring them into the processing and be part of their operations, and support really robust social projects. So basically you do well by doing good, and as they say, drink coffee, do good. So that's what really attracted me to being intimately involved in the coffee. And even though this is part of my family, I wasn't intimately involved. I knew that they were in coffee, but I wasn't personally involved until 2011, 2012. And it was the social projects that they're running on Seagree Estate, which are so well developed, so large and significant and impactful to that region, that opened my eyes to the possibility and this reality of coffee providing income for some of the most impoverished in our world, and the ability to, like I said, do well by doing good. So that's why I originally got involved. That's what's been the pleasure.
Right, because you were on your way to being an attorney, right? I mean, you were finishing law school.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm attorney not for hire.
Yeah.
But I'll bring the coffee. Yeah. And that just wasn't. I mean, it was environmental law, so I wasn't one of the bad ones anyway. But
okay, Vikram.
Yeah. Yeah, but it wasn't really for me. It sort of was a road that I went down too long, and then suddenly when it became a real reality, and I saw what was happening in the coffee and what they were doing, I just wanted to be involved with that. So I started selling containers on behalf of them to importers in America, and like I said, they were taking pretty low-level grades. The whole transaction was, in that word, transactional. It was very price, very much the C market, which is the international market that creates a price of coffee based on the amount being produced in the world. Sure. And the amount being consumed in the world, and not accounting for quality, not accounting for social projects or anything to do with relationship coffee. So it's very sterile, very sort of transactional, like I said, and so it wasn't particularly fun to sell to them. And as I talked to these specialty roasters, they were interested in connecting directly in the top grades, and so I floated the idea with the family, and VJ, who I refer to as my cousin. That's kind of the most accurate way to refer to him. It's kind of a complicated family relationship, but anyway, and they were interested. So he lived with me for 8 months here. We went around roaster to roaster for 8-9 months, giving out samples of the top grade, saying, hey, we're thinking about bringing coffee in ourselves. Would that be something that you're interested in? And we got a lot of good feedback. And so, after about a year or so of that, I brought coffee in, and it didn't go that well for a couple of years. It was it's a slow thing, and established relationships one by one is a great pleasure. But it takes time. Sure. And it takes multiple passes through, and through that, I mean, I've gotten friends who are also trying to do a good thing, and so
some could say beautiful. Best friends.
Yeah, you're my best friend. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I totally understand that, and as far as the grow slow kind of organic growth mentality, that's totally sort of what our business is based off of. So bootstrapped for sure. So that mentality and like seeing your heart for it, coupled with we'll get into later, like Seagree's dedication to pickers and stuff is, and how they're investing in people and infrastructure is sort of why we're involved. Plus, we get to hang out with you every now and then. Go
Try
grab
to
some
be entertaining.
Thai food or whatever. Which kind of segues into the next idea we want to get your wisdom on, as far as we'd just like your input on the typical value supply chain from coffee moving through P&G specifically,
Yeah.
And then how Seagree's estate coffee and that whole supply chain is different, how they differ, and then like what's the value out of Seagree?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that in a question is like the real essence of what this is about and what this is meant to represent. So in P&G, it's typically 85 to 90%, or it is 85 to 90% smallholders, which are like, small individual landowners where the coffee is growing wild on their land, or sometimes they're more actively managing it.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, they will pick the fruit, the cherry, when it's ripe, and sell it to a cherry buyer. A lot of times that's on the side of the road. There'll be guys that come up to specific points with like a pickup truck and buy by the kilogram, and they'll have an advertised like price per kilogram that they're purchasing for that day, and it's really low. And so the smallholder will sell to the cherry buyer. The cherry buyer will aggregate. You're right, just in the back of their truck, dump it in the back of their truck. So everything's just dumped in one pile, and they take it to a mill, right, where the mill will process it. P&G is mostly washed coffee, so they'll do the wet processing and the dry processing, process it and sell it to an exporter. And there's like 3 main mega exporters in P&G that are working with the importers, buying from the mills and selling on to the importers, and then importer to roaster. And so that's the way it mostly works in P&G. And so with that, you have aggregated coffee, so nobody's managing the picking of coffee. Nobody has an ability, since it's so like there's so many people involved doing various parts of it. You really can't manage quality
Or traceability, right?
You can't have traceability, because when you have one landowner that sold their cherry and it was aggregated with 1,000 other guys,
Right.
it's a regional aggregated coffee,
Yeah.
right? And so that's typically what you'll get for P&G. Papua New Guinea has a few single estates, and the estate word by definition will be a fully in-house project, right? Grow your own on your own land, own mills, and in our case, we have our own export license. And so we had a really unique ability to like take it that extra leg, import it ourselves and work directly with roasters. And that's basically what it was about. We have a unique ability, because it's all in-house, we can manage quality better, and so we can take roaster feedback and actually implement it.
Right.
If you had 7 other people down the supply chain that you had to educate each one of them on what to do, it makes very difficult to manage that.
Years and years and years.
And realistically, it's just tough to get everybody doing things all cohesively. So we had a unique ability to produce better quality P&G coffee and distribute it in a relationship focused way, and that's what we wanted to capture.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so that is exceedingly rare, that traceability and quality level. There's not a lot of those flavors coming out of P&G, and I don't know of many or any others that are having relationships with roasters as well. It's the farthest away growing region from America, so you don't get a lot of American roasters going there all that often. So it's one of the least known about regions, and because I was here, we wanted to represent that and bring some knowledge to the roaster from that region of the world.
For sure. Yeah, it's super far away. I mean, it doesn't even ship directly here, right? You've got to go through...
Yeah, you have to transship it through Australia or Malaysia, whatever, and it's 2 months on the water.
Jeez,
So it's significant obstacles, and then the infrastructure in P&G is really bad. I mean, the roads are unbelievable.
Sure.
So there's a lot of infrastructure challenges. It's a tough region for sure.
Sure. Well, cool. So a couple of emailed questions we got. I guess one is from Yield Coffee. Yield's a roaster here in town. They're some friends of ours, and they Instagrammed us a question about the number one, like what's the number one pain point producers have, and how do current trends in specialty coffee impact daily decisions in P&G? And I know it may not be daily decisions. It may be like a year's like projection, but maybe we can start with like the pain point that producers have.
Yeah, I think the number one pain point, as I see it, would be price and the C market, which I referred to a little bit earlier, but that's the international market that gauges supply versus demand in coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't account for quality. It doesn't account for social projects. And when you're selling to a traditional importer, and this is not to, there are really good importers too, doing a phenomenal job and really taking care of producers. Sure. This is in my experience. Mm-hmm. You get pushed on price based on where the C market is trading, but the C market isn't accounting for, like I said, quality or social projects or any of these good things that roasters do want to represent.
Right.
So the number one challenge was being constantly roped into a conversation about where the C market is.
Sure.
When that's not what we're doing. We're not doing commodity style coffee.
Right.
We're not just pushing out coffee. We're trying to grow it in a responsible way, trying to produce the best quality coffee we can, because that's what the roasters want.
Sure.
Right? So if we can kind of circumnavigate and just talk to, roasters, specialty third wave roasters, which are like great people, mm-hmm. trying to do a good job, trying to also put out a good product, we felt like, hey, this is a much more reasonable conversation. And roasters were very willing and eager to pay a price that was going to allow us
right.
to, afford a living wage to our pickers.
Especially now with the C is like $1.04 or something like that. It's so low, and with the maybe you could talk a little bit about like the cost of production.
Yeah. So the cost of production varies throughout the world. For us, it's $1.60, $1.70 to just produce it and to run the social project. This is before anybody gets paid. This is before any transportation, right? The logistics is fairly significant, usually about 30 cents per pound right there.
This is in-country production cost.
Yeah.
$1.60.
You have your fixed costs on the mills, you have picker wages, all the social projects. There's significant, electricity, the whole grid. So we're on a generator, we're on a whole bunch of generators. We're off the grid completely because it's so unreliable in PNG.
Really? Like brownouts all the time, stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you can't
think about that. Yeah.
So significant challenges there.
Just talking about the cost of production versus like how low the C is right now.
Right. So when the C is at $1 and you're producing for $1.60, $1.70, that obviously
you lose money by
doesn't add up well. Yeah. So, but when we're talking to roasters, they fully understand it's a very reasonable conversation where they're willing to pay, triple the C market price or quadruple. Because they can still do well with that. That affords the producers a living wage, and they can do well with it, and that supports an ongoing relationship, which is producing better coffee, encouraging responsibility, and taking care of your, the small farmers up to like we have a larger format, and so we have, several thousand pickers, but taking care of the most vulnerable in the supply chain. Mm-hmm. The relationship with the specialty roasters encourages taking care of all that, where in my experience with how it was being sold before, the whole thing it's not designed, but it results in the most vulnerable being taken the most advantage of.
Sure.
Because these guys aren't going to pay more, and when you have a crop and this is what you live on and you got to sell it, and somebody's willing to take all of it at a price that you're not going to make any money on, but you're at risk of possibly not selling anything, the producers end up having to sell it to the importers and make no money, right? So that wasn't a great system. By taking the opportunity that we had to sort of circumnavigate that traditional distribution channel, we've really allowed us to move into like the next generation of coffee, where we're producing quality coffee that a level of quality that has never come out of our production facilities. And really, I mean, I think, you know, what the feedback we're getting is this is some of the best Papua New Guinea coffee to ever come out, and we're taking roaster feedback and implementing that to improve the coffee, and they're more than happy to pay us a fair price. So it's just been like dream come true, really. I mean, we couldn't have imagined it. It
awesome.
Would have worked out this well.
So in talking about the price being like the main pain point, and how Seagree's and Benchmark Project is kind of combating that with paying higher wages, I think it'd be cool to talk about Seagree's tangible kind of boots on the ground infrastructure investment in their pickers. Maybe kind of talk about that some.
So first I'll start with PNG is a tribal culture, right? So tribal country. There's 600 tribes. There's two that pickers come from two tribes on Seagree Estate, and so managing sometimes tribal warfare happens, infighting happens, and violent theft is pretty prevalent. And so one thing is, from a pragmatic standpoint, maintaining homeostasis is very necessary to sustaining the overall operation. And with that has come, for the last 25 years, they've had free housing for all the pickers, free healthcare, 3 free schools for all their children, and those schools are open to the whole community. So even if it's not the pickers' children, anybody can come.
Really?
For the last 2 years, Benchmark, we've funded the books for the schools, and this has all been going on without anybody really knowing about it. And when I spoke to roasters, they love to support that, right? They're really happy that, as we refer to it as voting with your dollar, they're putting their money in and sort of buying coffees that are supporting socially responsible projects. And so we wanted to represent that. We wanted to represent what we think is a very good offering from PNG directly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you just say nearly 3,000 pickers on like peak
during the main
harvest,
season, 1,500 to 2,000 off season, and so they come to the estate, and you can have a living wage, housing, healthcare, and education for your children. That appeals to a large segment of that population, and that's like, you can do that anytime you want. You come to the gates of the estate, and you come in, and you're a picker. And so there's like some option for some of the most vulnerable people in that country.
Right, which that speaks volumes to us, as far as even though we had talked about, I know in the past, about how that could easily be viewed as like a pragmatic thing. Like they're going to get better quality if they're investing in their people. So one could think maybe they're just doing it so they get better quality. But at the end of the day, well, we know it's not necessarily that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there's a lot of work that is like good for the people, good for everyone kind of in that area, and that investment and willingness of Seagree to be that deeply invested in the people there is why we're on board in the first place. It's because 3,000 pickers. I mean, that's an order of magnitude more pickers than some bigger stuff we've seen in Central America that we work with, and to provide the infrastructure for essentially an entire village is insane. It's just huge.
It's a significant contributor to the economy in that region. And a significant employer in that region. So it's a big deal. And for PNG, like, the realities of improving the quality of coffee and improving the social projects behind it, this is one of the only realistic ways to achieve that. When you have so many smallholders and aggregation and not having access to mills, unless it's coming from the cherry buyers that are aggregating the coffees, how are you going to do it? Nobody has enough power over the entire supply chain to impact any part of it, and so everybody constantly gets taken advantage of. And so we had an ability to bypass that. It's not changing all of PNG coffee, but it is an offering that we think is being distributed really well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for us, it's definitely easily like the best P&G coffee that we've had as far as clarity and sweetness and stuff. Is just, it's amazing. So whatever you guys are doing, it's working.
Well, you're a big part of that,
Yeah.
and that clarity or cleanness that you're maybe referring to is a result of better processing, and that better processing is a direct result of talking to roasters like yourself about, hey, what are some ideas for improvement, and what are some other farm practices that you've seen in your other coffee travels, and then I can take that feedback and assimilate it and see what things are applicable or could be implemented in P&G on Seagrey Estate, knowing intimately how operations run there, right? And I think that sort of highlights a really, really important point. And I think Perfect Daily Grind, which is a coffee publication, had an article, really good article, talking about the concept of roasters giving feedback or ideas for improvement to producers without really knowing the challenges of those individual producers. Those could be climatic, those could be governmental challenges, they could be personal family challenges that that family farm is dealing with. And if you don't know those things, you might be leading them down a path that might not be the right path for them. So I think knowing those producers is critical to knowing what advice to take and what advice to not take.
Sure.
Right? And so in this case, I can step on both sides. I speak with them, right? And then I talk to you guys, and I can, sort of relay information that I think is going to lead us down the right path.
Right. Like, so I know that like during like a certain period in the wet processing, I know that playing 24-hour cat videos is like dead on. So you can take
It's
that
so
and leave
good
it.
for the coffee.
Yeah, I mean, like you see whether they're into that or not. But
Right.
I just slid that
Coffee's
across.
like very playful.
Yeah.
It's like
Also, sorry it's so freaking cold back here.
yeah. Did you know it's January and we're in Cincinnati?
Yeah. Well, this is like the.
With the lighting, I mean,
Yeah, I know. Matt's put a lot of effort into this whole space.
it's beautiful. So you just suck it up.
Yeah.
Right?
Someone who emailed us from our email newsletter had, I think, really good question, and she'll use terms that, or I'll use terms from her question that are sort of generic in terms of coffee, but you can sort of address now. Well,
Yeah.
I can get into the weeds, but how many farmers make up your cooperative estate, and how large are their farms? Maybe we can just start there. It's like a 3-part question. We can start with that.
Okay. So in this setting, it wouldn't be individual farmers. This is one large farm referred to as an estate, and estate is because everything is in-house, from the picking, all right, the fields, the mills, and the whole process can be done in-house. The drying fields, everything. And so it's not individual farmers, but it's referred to as pickers, the people that are picking the fruit. And so during the peak season, there's upwards of 3,000 pickers picking during, like, when everything's popping and needs to be pulled and
Right.
sent into processing. So you need a lot of additional help. So yeah, 3,000 of them, and like I said, they're just picking on the land, right? And then they, in the evening, will bring it to the pulper, where part of the wet process will be done, and they're paid by weight. So what they bring in is weighed, and then they're paid based on that, and they live on the estate. So it's all just done right on the estate.
Right, that's cool. So you kind of sort of alluded to this in answering that question. Her second part was, if they're especially small farming operations, how does your company regulate consistency and overcome some of P&G's infrastructure issues to enforce adequate quality control? You kind of got at that as far as like the quality control is sort of built in the fact that it's an estate,
Yeah.
and the estate owns the property, and
Yeah.
they're directing quality control measures like every day. Right?
Yeah. Well, so the fact that it's all in-house as opposed to buying from many different individual smallholders allows us the ability to manage the quality of what's picked and the entire process. So, I mean, that's the unique ability, and that's the huge advantage with an estate. It's really not possible in PNG, at least, and it's very challenging anywhere, to manage thousands of individual smallholders and educate them all on what you're looking for. And then with that, you don't have any traceability of, you know, they might have several different varieties that are growing on their land, so you don't have any ability to sort of lot out things and have specific varieties of coffee and come from a specific farmer. The estate setting is really the only way to have that traceability. As I see it, the only realistic way to have that sort of traceability in Papua New Guinea.
Okay, cool. So the second part of her question was if there, you sort of alluded to this when you were talking about your previous point. Her question is, if they're especially small farming operations, how does your company regulate consistency and overcome some of PNG's infrastructure issues to enforce adequate quality control? But some of that's sort of built in the estate, right? I mean, they're developing, or not developing, they're enforcing QC things every day. It's part of the structure.
I mean, so the especially small farming operations is the way that it's typically done. It's small holders, small landowners who are growing coffee and selling the fruit onto buyers and then on down this chain of custody. And that is very hard to manage. It's impossible, really, when you have thousands of individual farmers and it's all being aggregated, producing different amounts. It's not possible, as we see it, to really manage quality that well. But in any case, we have an estate setting where the pickers are picking on one farm, and so that inherently allows the ability to manage what's picked, pay a premium for ripe cherry, to bring it all into one pulper, and it's all from one plot of land. And because it's all in-house, that is how we manage that quality. That allows us the ability to manage quality.
Right, that makes sense. Cool. So one of our, I think this is an interesting question because it sort of gets to a basic question about quality globally, but it'd still be good to get your input on this. A wholesale customer of ours called MX Well asked, they said, I usually taste a unique flavor / quality to coffees from PNG. What distinguishes coffee from this area as compared to Central America or Africa? Is it the climate, soil, altitude, processing, or is there something else?
Yeah.
It's kind of a really basic, good question to...
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a good question. So, I mean, the flavor profile of coffee is the result of many different factors.
Like all those, right?
All of those, yeah. And, like, uncontrollable things like transportation time, but to get into it, basically the elevation, the variety, the terroir, so the soil itself, the type of sunlight, the type of processing, all of these things create a certain flavor profile. PNG typically, and PNG and Indonesian coffees in general tend to have flavors that aren't highly sought after by the specialty roasters in America. Leathery, tobacco-y, earthy, generally dirty flavors. But it still has a lot of the components that could create good coffee. Elevation, good varieties, and you know, volcanic soil. And so you have a lot of the right things. What you didn't have was good processing, and that's where things were falling down. And so we had good processing, and we've implemented even better processing to create much cleaner flavors than typically associated with PNG. So the earthy note, which is a common one associated with PNG, and I think that might be what you're referring to in the unique flavor profile. Some people like it, some people don't. I think the people that don't, or when that is not a positive sort of flavor, is when there's not enough cleanness and sweetness to kind of balance out that earthiness. And our processing is very rigorous and allows for that cleanliness. And specifically what happens is when you pull the seed out of the fruit, and I know you know this, but out of the fruit you'll have this sweet substance, sticky substance around it called mucilage, full of sugar. And if you don't wash coffee, not washing that off can lead to ferment So fermenty flavors, moldy flavors sometimes. So a lot of the dirty flavors associated with this part of the world. In ours, we have a triple fermentation process. So every three days, broken every 24 hours with a wash, followed by a 24-hour soak, which breaks down the mucilage further, followed by it goes through these machines that spin the beans around and spit them out. And when you feel the bean as they come out, I mean, you have no stickiness. It does a very good job of washing that mucilage off, and that is why there's such a clean flavor associated with our coffees. And that's just a result of good processing.
Sure. And maybe a good segue for you to talk about the Kula processing and what you were just talking about with a 3-day soak broken every 24 hours. Is that the Kula processing, or is that Seagree's estate thing, and then the Kula processing is separate? Maybe you could talk about
Sure.
you guys.
So that 3-day process is Seagree's signature, if you will, process. And so that's been done. What's new is those machines I referred to that spin the beans around. That's pretty new. That's only a couple years old. And so that's kind of adding an extra level of cleanliness.
Sure.
But the Kula process is something that I came up with in partnership with roasters. It was really like a result of roaster feedback. And basically what it refers to, the Kula name refers to a ceremonial gift exchange in Papua New Guinea. And a lot of the components or sort of parts of this gift exchange have to do with integrity. It's a gift exchange among the Ring of Islands there, among the tribes people there. And some parts of the story really resonated with me and made me feel like this was part of specialty coffee versus commodity coffee. It was all about a gift that we have, and we have respect for each other, and there's a lot of integrity in the relationship. And anyway, so the whole Kula ceremony spoke to me, and so I picked the name Kula to refer to special processing guidelines that I've requested for coffees that come through Benchmark.
Okay.
And this refers to raised bed drying. So instead of drying the washed beans on tarps on the ground, where one side is has no airflow and the other side is getting a lot of airflow, put them on raised beds so you have airflow throughout, so much more even moisture. Much more even moisture content throughout. I also have asked them recently to cover up the beans during the hottest part of the day to extend the drying time, which is
about how long, by the way?
7 to 10 days typically, but it's sun dried, so you don't have control over that all the time. If there's like rains that come in, that can affect that, obviously. But it's typically a sort of kind of looked upon well, sun drying versus mechanical drying. It's a less of a environmental footprint as we do this process. So that's mostly what we'll do. If the rains come in, there are mechanical dryers, but they haven't even turned those on for 3 seasons now, so we haven't needed them. If there's rains that don't let up, then that's what we would go to.
Sure.
So extended drying is really important, and then it goes through double color sort. So there's a color sorting machine that's programmed to like identify defective beans, right? Like black beans or cut or chipped beans, stuff like that. So it can eject them with this air gun that's in the machine.
Yeah.
So it goes through 2 rounds of that, and then finally 2 rounds of hand sorting. So a team of ladies individually sift through and will pick out defective beans. So it's incredibly labor intensive, but these extra steps really produce some of the best coffee that we've ever produced.
sure.
And so
you're like pulling in some Brazilian Columbia like color sorter like technology with getting defects out, and some East African like hand sorting things at the end, and kind of trying to meld. But to your point, you're not asking them or suggesting that they do something that it doesn't work for their situation, right? You've what they're capable of. You've suggested things, and these just happen to work with what they're able to pull off, right?
That is like a critical component, because like I'll assimilate a lot of roaster feedback and be able, because I have intimate knowledge of how the operations go on the estate, I can know what advice is going to apply and what advice is going to not apply, not be possible, and possibly lead us down a road that might end up being, you know, the wrong path for us. So I think knowing the producers intimately is a really critical component in assimilating and choosing the best advice. There's a lot of good advice out there, but there's a lot of bad advice.
Sure.
You gotta sort of, you know, pick carefully.
Like cat videos. It's great advice.
Yeah, you told me cat videos.
Yeah, I mean,
and
we'll see you next season.
sometimes I listen to you,
I mean-
and sometimes I don't.
You always listen to me, Victor. No, that's good information. Yeah, so in general, thank you for kind of coming here and driving from Chicago to hang out with us. And
Nobody ever wants to interview me, so I was just like, you want to interview me? I'm on the way.
well, we were just brainstorming like, what is the most handsome, dashing man that we know?
Yeah.
Vikram. It's like 3 seconds.
It's like that was like your 17th choice.
Whatever. Who the others weren't available. You were.
Well, I'm always available. Yeah.
No, but no, we appreciate your wisdom on this. I know you've been working. It's good to have your feedback on this because you've been working directly with family there, but you're also fully aware of needs or desires of the market in the U.S., which is like producing the best coffee in the world. So it's not producing, growing, but like roasting and like getting out there to customers. So it's your perspective in kind of riding the line right in the middle and being able to like cater to both sides. It's good to get your feedback and get you to talk about some of this stuff on cameras.
Yeah. No, like really thank you guys for having me for this and for the support in general. Like especially, you know, starting Benchmark, you know, there was some guys that sort of took a flyer on us early, and you're one of them, and that's continued support has been critical for me personally and for the entire operation. And this thing's developed into like a much more beautiful thing than I could have imagined. And looking back on it, it's a little bit I think you know, the odds were probably against us more than I realized, and so that early support was critical. And that continued support is critical, and your guys' commitment to sourcing ethically, supporting producers that you believe are doing a good job, and working with them year in and year out. This is what is making coffee better, and that's the truth. And you know, we really appreciate it. So you know, thank you guys for the relationship. We love it.
All right, my dude, it's great. I think that's it.